Yeah, I was going through all the comments on the channel and I ran into this person right here talking about using Boar with the Spectral Blade and doing like 6,000 damage per hit. I looked into it a little bit and I saw this video right here. So yeah, thanks to Chaos. And it goes without saying, this isn't my idea at all. I just saw all that power on full display and I wanted it for myself. So I made a video about it too. We're calling it the Critical Boar because it's critical and boring. Anyway, just take a look at the results. I have to admit, this was a tricky one to pull off. First, you have to land 2 mod shots, then execute your follow-up attacks within the time frame of the mod duration, which is only 6 seconds. So basically, you have to lock on the weak spots the entire time to take full advantage of all that damage. And bosses in Remnant 2 aren't just sitting around waiting for you to land boring drills in their weak points and subsequently hack/slash them to pieces. A lot of these assholes are altogether super annoying to pin down long enough to make the build work. This is why I leaned toward the Spectral Blade, because Atom Splitter required running a boss like 50 times for that exceedingly lucky scenario where you perfectly nail the weak points with your neutral backdash vision strike, and the animation for that attack takes forever too, and then every strike has to be critical on top of that. Feels great to melt Annihilation, but the other 49 runs are super boring when you're not actually hitting your drills dead on. Do you get me? So, Spectral Blade was just a little bit more workable. All you have to do is be in the vicinity of the drill point and you'll automatically land the blow with Whirlwind. But even so, there are many situations where adjustments had to be made depending on the length of the attack windows and the range of the encounter and just basic survivability stuff. So in this video, we're just going to get into the weeds and talk over a few different iterations of the build that I tuned over the course of a complete Apocalypse run, some honorable mentions, etc. And also one version that's super tanky for those moments in between bosses where you have to deal with trash mobs. We can look at the boss fights while we go over the various forms and illustrate their usefulness. So chronologically, I started with a Ritualist slant on this build while I was running the Awakened King. I'm happy to say the build pretty much melted everything in the DLC, so that's good. Let's take a quick look at the card. It's a simple crit build, just stacking Abrasive Whetstone on top of Probability Cord, with Bisected Ring for stamina and a Hane Crystal for that yummy 20% damage on top. Timekeeper is here to keep Miasma up the entire time with a cooldown of 36 seconds. Timekeeper brings the duration up to 40 seconds, so we got 100% uptime on that. The Relic is Tranquil Heart for simplicity's sake, and we're running melee attack speed as usual with crit chance and mod duration. This last one is pretty important because it gives us an additional 1 second of duration on the Boar. Damage is coming from the Spectral Blade, which I almost always use Overdrive with unless Survivability or Stagger is of concern, in which case you can swap out Resentment or Steadfast depending on the situation and the jewels that you're running. Besides that, you just need Boar on your person somewhere. I chose Long Gun because I like to have Corrupted Rune Pistol for the 10% buff, as you all know. The important traits in this build are always defensive, right? Plus Arcane Strike, Amplitude, Expertise, and Flashcaster, because you need skills as often as possible and with as much range as possible. Arcane Strike should provide enough mod power to keep Boar up 100% of the time, if you're landing your hits, that is. And this build performs very well against the One True King as long as you get a feel for the hitbox on your drills. They're a little bit tricky, but I usually found the ankles or even his ratty skirts to be a good spot to land the drills because his head is way too far up for Whirlwind. Ideally, you can time your attack such that you will stagger the king as soon as your boars expire, so you can tag him again with a couple more rounds during his recovery. The annoying part of this fight is always when he starts exploding everything and sending Dran minions out to kill you. Miasma functioned really well as an answer to this phase of the fight. Also, kill switch on the handgun was almost enough to take care of all the ads. I personally couldn't get him down before he entered his second phase, but I could tell that it was possible with a little more time commitment, maybe a little bit of luck. Let me know in the comments if you managed to do this. The Ritualist winded up being the same build that I used for the Corruptor, but I did have to swap out Overdrive for Steadfast because I kept getting interrupted by flailing golem limbs and stupid flying ads. That fight was so annoying and long. Really, not the best implementation of this build, but it was definitely plenty good enough to handle the job. There isn't much to say about this fight, so I'm just gonna skip through it. It's definitely the worst of the two possibilities on Yesha. Ravager is much better. I remember the first time I went into Ravager and he offers up the promise of immortality. Such an awesome sequence. I was playing through it with a good friend of mine, and we both were so deep in the game at that point. It was such an engrossing moment. And then when you're posed the option, like, to kill the doe, I was like, what the hell do I do right here? Do I just blast this dude in the face right now? So I did. And then the fight started all of a sudden, just like that. It was such a great gaming moment. The Corruptor just isn't cool like that. Pales in comparison. I guess just get your timing right and stay patient with him. That's about it. I'm going to skip over Nerud and see if anybody notices. Okay, once I came to Farron, I had to make a pretty significant pivot to a different build orientation because I really just needed a little bit more damage reduction to pull it off. As you can see, we've swapped our archetypes for Alchemist, Challenger in order to run concoctions to keep our health up and DR more significant. The main difference here is the addition of Atonement Fold and Hardcore Metal Band, which is giving us 5 permanent stacks of Bulwark. The added benefit of Bleeding is that we can equip Nightweaver's Grudge for some more crit chance, but also Haste, which is very useful in this build and helps to maximize our damage for each drill. I swapped out crit chance for damage in the Relic Shards since we're already sitting on a 30% chance buff from our jewelry, but most everything else is the same here. One quick note, I wasn't using Stone Skin but rather Living Will or Frenzy Dust because Stone Skin will cure your bleed, which can negate the Nightweaver's Grudge and also the Hardcore Metal Band, so please disregard this skill. I was just switching over to the archetype to take the footage and I forgot to change the skill. So yeah, the only other difference is the Steadfast Mutator for additional DR, because for some reason I was just getting my ass kicked in this fight, which is embarrassing to say, but whatever. It was an off day, I guess. The fight was another kind of long one on account of that stupid third phase, but it runs about the same. I traded out damage for DR, so the hits aren't as impressive, but it worked out in the end. The most important part of this fight is applying pressure on him because he's always retreating when you engage him at close range. So for Whirlwind to be effective, you just have to press him like really hard. I was using Kill Switch to handle all the stupid crystal eyes, which is nice because it generates quite a bit of mod power at once. And I love the feeling of switching weapons and then just blowing everything around you up. It's got a visceral quality to it. Besides that, it's all about just playing that third phase game with him. Dodge big swords. Get ready for his landing, wherever that's going to be. Okay, on to Root Earth, which I think is a good time to talk about this tanky version I built up just for the trash mobs. Nothing really groundbreaking here, just traded out a bunch of damage for survival again. Main difference being Dying Ember and Participation Medal. Besides that, we've replaced all the Relic Shards with defensive buffs and our Mutator with Steadfast for the increased DR, and it handles the mobs pretty well. I'm sure we all have go-to builds for every use case, but I just wanted to see if this could handle the moments on Root Earth where you're forced to fight adds. It's funny that Gunfire added those encounters. It's almost as if they knew that we would be running right through all of the optional fights, so they left a few adds that we had to sort out. Anyway, I'm happy to say that this build does quite well in those situations. It's not very flashy. Whirlwind feels so slow, but it'll work to get you through to Venom and Annihilation. Okay, saving the best for last. The 3 little pigs of Root Earth. Cancer was a breeze. I used the Ritualist with the addition of Brawler's Pride because I just wanted to see how fast I could get that Whirlwind going. With rocket fuel on top of everything else, the hits were so fast as to be obscene. I was playing him for speed, honestly. I was trying to get a sub 1 minute run just like without any glitches or anything like that. I couldn't do it, but just look at the footage. It's pretty amazing. It's a very effective tactic and a good build for this fight. Also, it's good to stick close to Cancer because the hitbox on his strikes is like, they don't work for people who are in his face. Somehow, if you're right there, you're pressing him, he has trouble hitting you. That's my experience, at least. Venom was a little bit more difficult, as you can imagine. I had to swap back to the Alchemist for my primary because I just needed a little bit more HP. I couldn't quite finesse Venom while trying to bring some proper damage with Whirlwind. It was a little too much for me to deal with. But as soon as I switched to Alchemist, I abused potency like none other. I was popping every single intravenous buff that the game has to offer before walking into that fight on every single run. I mean, Fairy Needle with potency at max stays up for 2 minutes. That's a long ass time in Remnant 2. Anyway, the trick in this fight is to land 2 perfect drills in his weak spot on the initial approach. This way, you'll be getting full credit for the Whirlwind strikes, and you can bring his bar down to like 50% or less before he starts his cheese-ass temper tantrum. After that, it's just a matter of responding to his moveset, not being greedy. The time to be greedy is at the very beginning of the fight, not at the end of the fight. Alright, here we are. Annihilation was both incredibly fun and also just so annoying. Here's where we brought out the Atom Splitter. I used my favorite mutator, Edgelord, because goddamn that weapon is slow as fuck. If you want to land blows on the second phase, then you need to have at least a little bit of speed. I also needed Hardcore Metal Band, so I could tank a few hits while Juggernaut was active and still be able to take advantage of the drills, you know? With this build, you should be able to bring his first phase down in 2 strikes. If you time the things right, and oh boy, what a feeling. But the second phase is gonna be a bit of a marathon, not a sprint. It's pretty rare to land the entire sequence of actions during the second phase because this guy is just always forcing you to dodge or moving to the side for those sword sweeps or something. And let's not forget that he teleports back and forth, so your boring drills are fully negated whenever you plane shift. I just wound up doing the dance with him. No funny business, just playing the boss. Finally, I was able to capitalize on an opening, and really one shot is all it takes. When you have that much damage in your pocket, you just have to wait for one moment. That, as they say, is that. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, if this was at all fun or helpful, drop a like and sub. If you have thoughts, leave a comment. This is especially true on this one because this whole video was born of a comment, so thanks to Thangohu5434 for the insight. Yeah, started this whole thing. And everybody else, I really appreciate you all so much. We're approaching 400 subs on this channel, and when we make it there, I'm gonna do something to celebrate. I'm not sure what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be something. Okay, that does it for me this time. Take it easy, and always remember to keep on farming.